Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In the last video, we discussed about various data roles that are present in the market, and we officially begin our course from this video. So we are starting with Python libraries. Before going there, let's discuss about Python. What is Python and what are Python libraries, right? Before we deep dive into pandas, numpy and all that. So just to tell you that Python is an open source software. Open source. What do you mean by open source? That it is available free of cost and anyone can use it, manipulate it and create their own versions, right? So this is open source, means it is free of cost. Now what happens that, for example, this Python does not come with all the functionalities. Okay, there are data structure present in Python which are inbuilt, right? But it does not handle everything on your own. And that is why we take the Python and we modify it. We modify or we build systems inside Python. For example, let us say you have a video game. Okay, for example, what you do that you have a basic version of a video game, which for example, you're having a cricket game. Okay, now what happens that so in this cricket game you see basic cricket grounds, basic player names and all that. Now what happens that you want to customize this like moving ahead, so you do crack. Remember, if you remember, we add cracks or we add version controls where we, for example, we create a new tournament of our own. Okay, so one is our base version, and to that base version we add various versions. For example, v1, it might contain for example an IPL season. V2 might contain a cricket world cup. Okay, so what are these are the libraries that you are adding. Okay, the base version does not has this. The base version only supports few basic concepts, few basic data structures. Now over the time, people have built because of the Python's good functionality, people have built various libraries, okay, which make working with Python easier for relevant use case. For example, there is a library called as pandas, which we will discuss just now. It is an equivalent to of SQL in Python, right? For all the data analysis, we use pandas. Then there is numpy, which is numerical Python. Okay, what this library does, it is used for calculation stuff. Okay, then for graph there is matplotlib, and there is Seaborn. Okay, so these things are for graph. Similarly, for data science library, there are like scikit-learn. Okay, and so on. There are like a number libraries present for Python in the market right now. So you don't need to know all, you just need to understand those libraries which are relevant to your case. Okay, and understand few of the working of those libraries. And in this video we will start our introduction with the pandas library. But before that, so just understand Python is a base version, basic Python. Now we modify that Python by adding various libraries so that we can use Python for various use cases. Okay, so that's the basic concept of a library. So now we will start our discussion. So let us start our discussion with pandas. So as I mentioned, pandas is nothing, it is just an equivalent of SQL in Python. Okay, so what is SQL used for? It is used for data analysis. Okay, so what all task we do that, first of all, in SQL you can load any data set. Okay, you can perform summary on any data set. Okay, you can remove duplicates, and you can like analyze, like lot of functionalities are there in SQL. Similarly, those things we will try to implicate through pandas in Python. Okay, so this is the role of pandas. Remember, pandas is used to analyze data. Now the thing is that, again, this only handles the structured data. So we'll be handling the structural data. So it could be a CSV file, it could be an Excel file. Okay, and sometimes you pass a text file as well. Okay, then there are like lot of similar files which you can connect to your SQL server as well. Pandas, like there are multiple things present with functionalities that pandas provide. We will read about it in the booklet right now. So, but overall functionality is this, that you can load data and you can perform various analysis. Now remember, in pandas there are two things. One is called 1D vector, which is, you can say, data in simple 1D format like this or like this. And second is called data frame. Okay, so we don't call data, we call it data frame. What is a data frame? The 2D, the table structure that we use in SQL. Okay, that is called data frame here. So any 2D table is called data frame in Python, and otherwise you can call it a 1D like 1D column or a 1D vector. So we will see all this as we start our discussion with the pandas. Okay, so as you see, pandas is an open source library. So what do you mean by open source? That someone has created this. It was not present, this functionality was not present in Python from beforehand, right? So there was a Python software and someone created these functionalities, maybe some Python developer, and that's why it is called open source. And open source means it's free of cost. That's why we are able to access it. Okay, for data, so it is used for data manipulation and analysis. It provides two primary data structures. One is series and data frame, as I mentioned. So what is a series? Series is your data in this format or your data in this format. Okay, and second is your data frame. Data frame is your tabular data. So it converts into one of these depending upon your use case. So now see, you can see, as I mentioned, why is it used? It is used because it makes handling large data sets simply and intuitive. As simple, it is just like SQL. You can use any large particular data set here. So CSV, Excel, SQL database, it can use anything. And cleaning, transforming, we will do all this thing in this particular sheet. And when to use pandas? Pandas, you need to analyze and manipulate structured data. As I mentioned, it works with the structured data. So these all are structured data. This is not like a JSON file. So there you use pandas. So always remember this, where to use pandas. It is very important because there are so many libraries in Python. What do we get? We get confused. Okay, which library to use there. So remember, because pandas is used very extensively, pandas you have to use for a structured data. And what is a structured data? It is either a 1D or it is a 2D data. Okay, 1D means this, 2D means this. Okay, so let's start by looking at some of the functionalities. So what this library does is that in the series, a series is like a column in an Excel. As I mentioned, it is just like a column, but it can hold any type of data. It can add numbers, strings, dates. So what it means that, for example, it can have, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that, or it can have A, B, C, D. This is different from the list. I'm just saying this is just like in any data set, there is a column. This is a single column and this is multiple columns. So you can say like this. So how to create? Now remember, whenever you are using any library in Python, you have to import it. Okay, because there are two types. So either that library is present. If it is present, you have to import it. Otherwise you have to download that library. So pandas is by default present, so you don't need to download it. You just need to write import pandas as PD. And what is this? We are importing, there's a pandas library. Okay, and we are naming it as PD. You can change it. By default, the nomenclature is like this only, that we name it PD so that you immediately identify. But you can name it. You can name it as A as well. It totally depends upon you. Okay, but I'll be using as PD. Now we are creating a series. So remember, from this we created an, using PD we will create an object called data. Okay, so method, class, object, right? So we're creating a pandas object here. So what is that? It is pd.series. Remember, there are two methods, series, or it is either series or it is either data frame. So first of all, we need to pass the value in that series, and then we need to use index. Okay, and what all that index is? A, B, C, D, E, right? So each number correspond to some index here. Okay, so A, B, C, D, E, like you can change it to anything else. It's totally up to you. And then you just print data. So let me just rerun it. So how do you do things? That first of all, you do import pandas as PD. Okay, this is your first part. Here you imported a library. Now you have to create an object. Okay, so you'll say data, right? So first of all, what you'll do, you'll use data, and after that you do, this is an object of pandas class. Okay, so you'll do PD this, If you don't use PD, you'll have to write pandas.series. Okay, so you'll use PD.series, PD.series. Okay, now you will create a bracket like this. Now inside this you have to pass the value. So what values are present? It is 10, 20, 30, 40 and 50. Okay, this is my value. And after this I have to provide them an index. So what is that index? So index, for example, as I mentioned, just like here we provided an index. It can be anything. We'll test out multiple things on this index. So you right now provide A, then you provide B, then you provide C, then you provide D, and then there are 5, right? So there will be E. Okay, so you close this. Now your brackets is closed. Okay, now what you do, you print this object data. Okay, so just to mention, right, if you're not clear, like all of you who have forgotten what is object, what is method, what is class, just let me give a refresher. There are 3 things. So there is a class, there's an object, okay, there is a method. Okay, so what is a method? So class is technically, for example, let's say there is a restaurant, for example, McDonald's, right? There is a McDonald's restaurant. I have explained this example in my oops video as well. Let's say there's a McDonald's. Now it has different burgers, right? So it is known for burgers. So it has burgers, it has soda. Okay, it will have for example some sweet dishes. Okay, let's say. So these are the categories of items that are present in McDonald's. So these are called classes. Okay, what all categories of things are present in your site. Okay, now inside burger there can be a veg burger, there can be a, for example, chicken burger. Okay, and there can be, for example, a beef burger, like simply whatever you want. Okay, so there are 3 types of burgers. What are these? These are objects of that class. Okay, these are the objects of the class burger. Similarly, soda, it can have, for example, Pepsi, it can have Coke, it can have anything else. You can name it, for example, Fanta, right? So these are what? Objects of the class soda. Similarly, for sweet also there will be method. So there is a class and there is an object. So each class is an object. Now each object, we can do multiple things to them, like object. For example, let us say this veg burger is there. You can either eat it, okay, you can throw it, okay, or you can store it. There are 3 things you can do with your object. Okay, so this is called a method, that whatever method you are doing. So class, object and method, there are 3 things. So what is my class? So just to summarize, my class was burger. Okay, what is it? Is a category or a classification of type of thing which are present in each burger. There are multiple objects, so there will be objects, and one object is veg burger, and in object, each object can go, we can do multiple things to that. Okay, so these are called methods. Okay, similarly, for another example of oops, let's assume there's a, so let us say there's a, for example, again let me use the car example. Okay, so there is a factory, there's a big factory of cars. Okay, now there's a big factory, for example, of a transport. It produces cars, it produces trucks, okay, it produces jeeps. Okay, so what are these? These are classes. Now car can be of BMW, car can be of, for example, Ferrari, or it can be of any other category. So these are called, so this is class, these are the objects of the class. Now each car can have further, either it can accelerate, okay, you can stop, decelerate, okay, or you can just stand by, depending upon whatever you want to do with your car. So these are your methods. Okay, so again, this is the architecture, object and method. And how we write down in Python? Class dot object dot method. That's how we write down in things. Okay, so we'll do car dot BMW, or let's say it wants to accelerate dot accelerate. So this is how you write a Python syntax. Now similarly, whatever these libraries are present, these are classes. Okay, these libraries which are present in Python, these are called classes. So whether you call it a pandas library or it a, let's say, numpy, whatever library, these all are classes. Now these classes can have subclasses, like pandas can have multiple classes, C1, C2. Okay, but what we do after we get any class, we create an object of that particular class and then we use a method. So for example, in this particular case which we just saw, we used pandas class, and using this pandas class we created an object data. Okay, so pandas is a class. Pandas has series class and it has a data frame class. Okay, so right now we took pandas.series and we stored it as an object here. Okay, so this is what we are doing here, and later on we can use this data to multiple. For example, right now we are printing the data. Okay, so method is generally done object dot method. So you cannot do like print series. Okay, it will be wrong because series is a class. So you can always print object only. So that's why you need to convert it into an object, and then only you will print. So this is what we are doing here. We import pandas, and what we do is that in pandas we call a series class, and in series class we provide all the things. For example, 10 to 50, which is there, and we provide the index. And now once we print it, okay, module pandas has no attribute series. Let me just cross check if I'm using the, okay, S is capital. Yeah, sorry, my bad. So sometimes this can play a role. Okay, so what is the data type? This is integer data type. Now for example, let us say I remove this index. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it still comes. So for example, even if you don't give any index, it will give an index by own. And if you remember, in Python, indexing is done from basic 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's how your data frame is created. So that's how your series is created. Now we move to, so here we create a series with 4 numbers, and each number is associated with the label. We created our own labels, we might not need to. Now comes, how do we access the elements of a series? Okay, so for example, let us say we don't have any label here. So if you remember Python lists, how do we call anything in Python list? So let's say you can call a series or a column. For example, let's say things are there. So 10, 20, 30, 40. There are 4. Or you can say it is of this format: 10, 20, 30, 40. So how do you do? Remember, in Python, indexing starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, or it will be 0, 1, 2, 3. So what you will do, you will take your object name, so data, okay, you'll call your data object, and then you will use square brackets, and then you will call whatever item you need to call. For example, I want to call the item at index 1, so I'll just pass data 1. So just look at this. So what I'm doing, data 1. So I got this first, the second value, that is 20. I do data 20, data 4. So I got 50. Now let me do data 5. Let's see what comes. Okay, it will give an error because value error, such a value does not exist. Okay, if you remember from the Python previous class that there are value error or key error. So this key is not present. 5 is not present. So we can only take indexes up to 4. So this is how things are done. Now, if you, for example, if you have index present here, for example, let's say you have data B, because you created index for your own. So you call data and you pass it B, and you just print it, you will get the value. So you can access the element through this method, like in whatever format you like. So that's the basic thing with series. Now we'll move with the major part, that is data frames. So now we come to the second class in pandas, that is data frame, right? So series was mainly used for 1D rows or 1D columns, right? And for 2D we use data frame, as I have spoken again and again. Now let's see how do you do that. So for example, let's say this is the data. We will directly start getting things on this one. So let's so this is a JSON data format, right? So let's import pandas as PD. Okay, so now we take the data. So what is this data? This data has 3 columns: name, age, city, right? So this is not a single like a single vector or a single list that we see. There are 3 columns and these are present. This is called a JSON data format where key value, this type of data is present. Now what we will do, we will first of all create an object of called data frame. So we'll do a data frame object. Now what is that supposed to be? Remember, that is supposed to be the first of all class PD. Okay, then inside class there is a subclass that is called data frame. Okay, frame, and inside what we'll do, I'll pass the value that is data. Okay, now I'll run this. So I see the code run successfully. Now let's see the type of df. So we do type of df to check what is its type. It gives me data frame. Okay, so this data is not a JSON format now, it is a data format. So for example, let me just keep it here. Let's call it data2. Okay, and now run this. Now let me call what is the type of data2. Let's check. So it's a dictionary, right? Because it's a JSON or a dictionary format. Now we have converted this into a data frame, and let's check by printing. So we will do print and we do df. Okay, so see, we have got the data in this particular format, that it's a column name. Now after that we are able to call or print the data set in a tabular structure, which is this. Now comes things how we can access the elements. Now there are 2 methods to access the elements inside any particular table. So one is using the key value. So for example, this particular case, we have this table and it has 3 columns, or you can say 3 keys it has. Okay, so let's say this is key 1 and this is key 2, this is key 3. So if I just use df and I just in the bracket I pass k1, it will give me the column name, or it will give me this column, or it will give me this column. Okay, so let's see this. So we go to df and then we do, for example, it was name. Okay, if I do this, I'll get name. And but I cannot do like this. For example, let's say I do after age. Okay, this will give me an error. So I have to call only one key. So I cannot pass multiple keys here. So I call age. So it will return me the age column. So that's how you can access the element through a like data frame. Now there is another very interesting method that is which you will actually use, that is called iloc. Okay, now so iloc is a very important method. So for example, if you remember, we have a list like this. Okay, and there's 1 2 3 4 5. If I have to get the second element, what do I do? L1, right? If I have to get this value, second and third, what do I do? L1 3, right? 1 means starts from the first index and it goes till second index. That's how indexing is done in Python. This we have covered in our basic course. Now after this, so for example, because there are 2 columns here, so one column goes this way and one column goes down way. So we will have to use this slicing twice in any particular system. So in iloc, what we do that if you have to call anything, so iloc is the method on df.iloc. iloc is a method. Okay, then what you do, you either first you have to provide information for the rows, then you have to provide information for the column, and corresponding to that you can access any particular thing. So we will see various properties of iloc on this particular example. So for let's say I just want to pick a single row. Okay, let's say I want to pick a single row. So what I will do, I'll do df.iloc. Okay, now remember I don't have to pass column. If I don't pass column, it will by default assume I am calling row. Okay, so what I will do, let's say I have to print the first row. So in first row I have things like this, right? So it's like this. So how the indexing is done, 0 1 2 3. the indexing of rows is done like this, and I want the first row, so I will do 0, and it will give me the first one. So let's try out this one. So I did df, okay, this is my data frame dot iloc, okay, and then what I do, I have to get the first row. So if I do this, it will give me this John 28 New York, because this is the first row. Okay, so just let me run this. So yeah, so name, age, city, and I got the value John, New York. Now let us say that I have next thing as well. Now let us say I want to print multiple rows. So if you, now let's come here. For example, let's say I want to print 0 row 1, let's say 0, these 3 rows. Okay, so what it will look like. So let's say I want to print multiple rows. Okay, I'm yet not printing, I'm printing all columns so far now by default, because let's see how to print rows first. So df.iloc, now I have to print first row to third row. So how I will do 0 till 0 1 2, so it will call 3, correct. Now if I do this, it will give me, so let's do 0 till 3. So it should give me John, Anna, Peter, information for these 3 people. Now let's run this code. Okay, so John, Anna, Peter. Similarly, you can play around. Let's say you want all the rows. So you'll do 0 4, right? This will give you all the values. So first part was getting the rows. Now what we can do is we can actually introduce columns as well. Okay, so for example, let us say I want only first 2 columns, these 2 for the first row. So what I will do, let's come to the whiteboard here. So I want, remember, in the row I want only the first row, in the column I want first 2. So how columns are structured? So columns are just like lists that we saw. Okay, so there are 2 cases. First of all, I want the first row. So what will happen? In the first row, I'll pass 0, right? Because I only want this thing. Then I will use a comma. And how many columns do I need? I need 2 columns, this and this. So column will vary from 0 to 2. Okay, so if I use this particular formatting, it will give me the first row and the 2. So this is 0 and I do 0 till 2. Okay, this means first row and first 2 columns. So see, so I got for John, that is the first, John and age. I got these 3 things. Now let us say I want 3 rows as well. So what I will do, 0 to 2. So what it will mean, get the first 3 rows and the first two columns. Okay, so let me run this. No, it means 2 rows and 2 columns. Sorry. So it will give me 2 rows and 2 columns depending upon how I want to use it. So this was like selecting rows and columns simultaneously. Now, how do we select all the rows? For example, let's say I want to select all the rows and I just want the first column through this. So do you remember how to select the whole list? We just do this one. So we want all the rows. So let me explain. For example, let's say if we have a list here and if you want to, let's say A, B, C, you want to get everything. What you do? L and this thing. If you guys don't remember this, like you need to watch that list video again, but this is a very fair, simple concept. I have covered it in detail, right? So if you use this, it means catching the whole list once again. So what I did, I want the whole rows and I just want the first column. So I will do this. So it will give me all the rows for the first column. So that's how things are done with iloc. Now there can be another attribute of this, that for example, let's say you want to select all row and all columns. So you can use this method, right? So if you, for both you passed and you got for all the rows and all the column for both of the cases. Now let us say I want to select a specific row and specific column. So for example, let us say I want 2 rows, okay, and I want 2 columns. So what I will do, so in this particular case, so let's say I'll do 0 to 2, okay, and I do 0 to 2 here, 0 to 2 here. Okay, so what did it give? Yeah, so it will give me the first row and the third row. So that's how this is done. So for example, we can select various slicing, and correspondingly we can get the right column and the right information that we want. So this is how things are done in iloc. I'm just thinking out one more method. For example, let's say, yeah, we can use a negative slicing. So there is, if you do iloc -1, so what will happen? It will give you the last element, Linda, right? So that's how things are done. It gave you the last row. And apart from this, I think we are good ahead. So for, yeah, let's say I want a specific, for example, I do specific cell value, then I will use 1 comma 2. Okay, so you can play around with this. It's a very simple thing. First is row, second is column, and you can explore. We have covered this thing in detail, so it will help you understand things there. So that's about the data frame and using iloc to access the elements. So now we will move towards some of the common use cases of pandas. The first, of course, it is how to import data from a CSV file. So pandas has multiple like use cases. This is the major one because it can read any CSV, and as I mentioned, any SQL database or any tabular thing it can take. So how you do that is you simply create a data frame object like df. You do so pd. Okay, there's a method or you can class, sorry, there's a class called read CSV, right? What does this do is that it can, if you provide the path to any CSV file, okay, it will read that. And what does this df.head does? When you pass this, it will print the first 5 rows of your data set. Okay, so how to, now the point comes that how do we decide that how do we know where my file is located right now? So for example, so in your Jupyter, if you just type this pwd, okay, it gives Python working directory. It will give you the directory that you are working in. Okay, so you can create a df is equal to pd. Okay, so pd dot read underscore csv is your class. Okay, and now you will provide the path name. So what is the path of my file? It is this one. So I place in my desktop like this. Okay, so you provide this path and you just close it, and now once you run this part, it has read. Now if you do print df, you will get your data set. Or you can also do that df, so print df dot head. So what does head gives? If you have, for example, when you work on real data sets, right, there are a lot of rows, so you cannot load everything. I mean, you just want to check the structure, so you just use head. Head gives you, by default, it gives you the top 5 rows here. So see this. Now if you change the things here, for example, let's say you just do 2, it will give you 2 rows. So depending how many you want, it will give you. Now by default it's 5. So this is how you load the data in your Python working directory. Now, so the next part is exporting the data to an Excel file, right? So it is a pretty simple thing. No rocket science is here. You create an object called file path and you export it, right? You provide the path where you want to. So for example, I want to export to this particular path on my system, and I have given df.toExcel. Okay, there are multiple methods. You can explore them. You don't need to remember. Just remember that pandas can be used to import and export file. Then whether you want to keep your index true or false, it's up to you. Okay, so you don't need to remember all this. Just remember that it can be done using these methods. So main thing you need to remember is pd.readcsv is used mainly to import data from CSV file. You might not be doing it because in real world, when you start working, you have to import data from your servers, right? So there you use API connections or you use some like SQL connection, those things you use. But yeah, for this course, because we will be using CSV file from our desktop or system, so we should know this particular function or method. Now we start with the data handling, the data cleaning part. Okay, so how do you handle the missing data? So first of all, what we will do, we have this new file, sample data cleaning, present in our location. So what I will do, I'll just copy this particular file here and I will load it. Let's check out my base file first. And so let's print all the rows. If you see, my data set has total 7 rows, and this NaN means blank. These values are missing in my data set. Okay, NaN by default, if any cell in Python is missing, it will mark it as NaN. Okay, not available. So that is how it is used. Now what I want to do, let's say I want to drop the missing values. So what is that thing? There's an object called, the method called drop NA. Okay, on the data frame that you can use. So what you will do is that you have this data frame object. Okay, so you will do df. So let's call it clean, or a simple to df dot. So you have to drop NA. So drop NA. Okay, and you do this thing. So by doing this, you are technically dropping the, so if any of the row contains NaN. So for example, if we see this whole row does not contain blank, right? This cell has value, but drop NA does that. If there is any row with any blank, it will remove that row. Okay, so remember this particular thing in Python. It's not that it will only remove total blank rows. Total blank rows do not make much sense. So this method is used here. It's a pretty simple. You should just remember this. Now there's another thing called filling missing value. For example, let's say I don't want to drop it. So what I want to do is that let's say df dot head. Okay, print. I want to print the first 10 values. Let's load the data again. Okay, now I'm not dropping it. I see that there is NaN, right? I want to replace these values. So how do you replace them? You use fill. Okay, you can fill them in any particular value. So fill NA. Okay, now you want to fill it with 0. So you got 0 here. Let's say you do 10. So you will get 10 here. So whatever value you want to do, you will get it. So far, what methods do we have it discussed? So let's create an architecture as well. That so far, the first thing that we discussed, that our pandas will have series and it will have data frame. Okay, now data frame can be accessed using iloc method that we mainly discussed. Now after iloc method, we cleaning. So first you can either drop your missing values, fourth, or you can replace your missing values. Okay, so these 4 things we have covered so far. Okay, so depending upon your use case, we will do that. So remember these things. Even you might forget what all they are exactly, because we'll be doing lot of Python functions, but remember that something like this can be done in Python, and if you practice a lot, right, you will remember these names by default. So initially you might not remember, but it's totally fine. Just understand the concept, the name of these methods, these functions, you will remember with time. Okay, now let's say you have to remove duplicates, right? Drop the duplicate rows. So how will you do that? You have df.drop duplicates. So let's check the data set again. Let's say I'm loading it again. Okay, so whatever duplicate rows are present, for example, let's say this is John and this is John, right? These are duplicate rows. So I want to get rid of this. So what method is used? It is drop duplicates. Okay, so what it will do, let's see. So you df dot drop underscore duplicates. Okay, so if you do this, drop duplicates, and you just pass the value, because we don't need to pass any particular thing there. So you use this, and you see the second John has been removed. So if it identifies any duplicate, it will reduce it. So the third was removing the duplicates. Remove duplicates. Okay, these methods we discussed These are very simple ones. There's no, as I again mentioning, no rocket science. These are just things that you do in your SQL as well. It's just that how do you do things in your, I will say, in your Python, right? So that is the point. Now comes the data transformation, applying functions to the columns. So there's an apply method present here, and let us say you want to apply some function. So for example, let's say in my main data set, okay, in my main data set we have age 28, 24, something like that. You realize that, oh no, I think my age is incorrect. I need to add 1, or let's say I need to multiply age by 2, or I need to add age by 1, by 5, or anything. So you want to make some transformation here. So how do you do that transformation? If you remember, there's a method called apply, and what you want to do is called lambda. So let me just go again. So the sixth thing is called transformation. Okay. Now again, I'm not going to explain what is lambda function, because that I have covered in the previous course, so you can refer that video there, but I'll explain what this code is doing. So you are saying that in data frame age, okay, apply, and then you create the function. Okay, so technically let me write this again. So what you're doing, that you're saying df, okay, your age. Now you're replacing this with you're doing this, you're taking df age. Okay, now you need to apply some transformation to this column. So how do you apply the transformation? There's a method called apply. Now okay, I said I have to apply something. What do you do? Remember, we use lambda function for that. Like if we have to make one line changes, that if there is one line function that we need to build, we can use simple lambda function. So how does lambda function work? That for each of the value in this column, that is x, okay, what are we doing? So just to explain, lambda keyword will say that, okay, for each of the value in this, which it is marking as x, increase it that by 1 or increase it by 2, okay, and then just close. Okay, so now let's print df. So if you see that it has taken all the values and it has incremented it twice, right? So it took and it added 2 to it. So I'm just checking if I did add it 4 times. Yeah. So if you see, it took the value x, each of the age, and incremented it by 2. This is what apply function works. So this was the transformation where you use apply, and with apply you can use any lambda function, any simple function, def function, right? So these are the basic things. Remember, we will be doing these a lot whenever we start working on the real data sets. So remember these methods, transformation. Okay, now let's move ahead. Renaming columns. Okay, so for example, we want to change name to first name and city to location. Okay, so it's a pretty simple thing. I think what you do, you take df.rename, you use this function, and you want to rename columns, right? So you will rename those columns here. So what I am doing here, so if you see once again here, that you take your object df. So let me run this again. Okay, so df, okay, is equal to df dot, now I need to update a rename. Okay, and what do I need to update? My columns. Okay, so I'll pass, now this thing will come in form of a dictionary. So columns. Okay, now I will pass a dictionary. So what is my name? Let's say replace name with first underscore name. Okay, and again comma, let's say we replace city, sorry, so we replace city with, let's say, location. Okay, and just let me change it here, and this worked, and now we close it, and now we close it. So what are we doing? We are using rename function we're changing this name to first name and then city to location. Now when I print df, now print df, remember Python is case sensitive, so you have to use it correctly. So your name is changed, first name and location. So now coming to this, just note it down whatever methods we are doing, right? So we do rename method, because these are one of the most common things that you will need to do later. That's why I'm using them. So just keep a track and as we move ahead. Now let's see some of the basic application. We have done this indexing and selecting. So how do you do? Call the df and you just call the column name. Okay, selecting multiple columns. So instead of doing separately, you call a further sublist and you just name whatever location you want, right? This we just did, and we just used iloc method as well. You can read it. So this PDF, this Python workbook is for this only, that just start solving everything. After the lecture is over, start reading things from top to bottom and you will just remember everything. Okay, now comes the part that is filtering data. So how do you filter rows based on a condition? Let's say I want to filter things where my age is greater than 30. So let me do one thing. So let me read this data again. So what I will do, I'll create a data frame object. Okay, now what is my objective? I need to filter those particular thing where my age is greater than 30. So let's say you can call it a df, or you can call it df1 for example, right? So is equal to df. Okay, now what you need to do, you need to filter this particular part. So you call a substance, just like we call any value inside it. For example, let's say we call 1 2 3, right? So that thing you need to do here, df, further you call df, and what is this? Age. Okay, so age. Now this age has to be, let's say, greater than 35. Okay, and now you close it. So now you print df1. Okay, so you got only one person whose age is greater than 35, that is Steve. Now similarly, instead of this, you can just simply do this one as well. You just call df. Okay, no, all this thing is required. You just say that, okay, I want age greater than 24. Okay, just directly call this and you will get the results like this as well. So this is how things are done. So this is filtering values. So after rename, we did some basic filtering. Okay, so now we move ahead. So filtering is done. Filtering based on multiple conditions. You can just use an and symbol between two conditions and you will get those particular filters. Okay, now we move to the next part, that is group by. So now we move to the next part, that is group by, right? Now let's read about how we can do simple group by. What is group by? Group by is basically summarize whatever data, your data set is presently on, let's say, name level, but you want to create a summary of your data set. So how do you do that? So for example, in this particular set, we have name, we have city, occupation, salary, and age. So let us say what I want to do, that I want to get average salary across occupation. Right now, of course, we have very limited data set. We don't have a lot of things, so it's fine. So yeah, so right now it's fine. But what I will do, first of all, I will run this data frame. Okay, now I will replace, I will let me drop my duplicate values, right? So what I will do, that df dot drop na. Okay, so what will happen, let's say df2 is equal to drop na and print df2. Okay, so I have this df2 where my like blanks, you can remove them or you can just replace them, that's totally up to you. Now I want to check the average salary across occupation. So what I will do is I'll create a df dot group by. So there is a method called group by. Okay, so this is object data df, and on that I'm applying this method called group by. Now let's say I want to group across, I want to create summary across occupation. So what I will do, I'll pass the bracket occupation, okay, and I'll close it. So what it will do right now, it will summarize across occupation. Now the question comes, what I want? I want the average of salary, for example. So after this, I will be passing the column name that I want to use. So I will use salary. Okay. Now for salary, what do I want to have? I want mean. So I will use mean method on this. So object on that I used method group by. Then I passed the variable on which I want. Then I passed so you want a categorical variable across which you want, and then you want the numerical variable, just like for example you do in SQL. What do you do in SQL? You do like select, okay, occupation, then you do average of salary, correct? You do the same thing, and what you do in the end, group by, you say occupation, or you say group by 1, whatever you write, right? This is exactly the same thing. You're grouping it by occupation and you're taking the average of mean of salary. So this is how things are done in Python. Okay, so now you just run it. So you will, let me remove this. Yeah, so if you see, you got across various occupations, you got multiple say average of salary. Now let us say I want to get the average of two things. So what I will do, whenever I have to get the average of two things, I have to include multiple brackets. So salary, and let us say I want to get average of age as well. Okay, and I just close it. So it will give me average of salary and age for each of these people, right? Now when we have the data set like lot of rows, then it will make more sense. Right now, because only there is 5 rows present, so it will not mean much. Now let us say I want to do one more thing. Okay, I want that across city. Okay, for example, I want to have the multiple aggregation function. That right now I'm using mean, right? Just like we use multiple variables, I want to have multiple, like I want to have mean, I want to have max. So how do we do that? Okay, so basically you have to use multiple aggregate functions there. So for example, let's say remove this occupation, or let's keep this occupation. Let's say I want salary only. Okay, so I will remove this thing. Okay, so for salary, what do I want? I want mean and let's say max. So I'll use aggregate function. So aggregate, I'll close this. Now what all do I want in aggregation? I want mean and I want max. So I will just simply use mean and then I will use max. Okay, remember these are the keywords, so you have to use them exactly the way they are. I know this syntaxing is little bit different from SQL. You might be thinking, how are you writing? But remember, in Python things work by object.method. So first method, then further second method. That's how things are being done. Okay, so just read it, just do on your own, get familiarized with this. You will remember for sure. It's just that if you're doing it for the first time, you might not remember the functions, like how it is written, because I mean, as I mentioned, this is different from SQL. This is not intuitively very thing that okay, I have to code like this, but don't worry, you will remember it. Okay, so yeah, so I have got aggregate for across salary, I got mean, and I got yeah, so I need to do one more thing. Sorry, I didn't check. Yeah, whenever, remember, I have to use two things inside anything, so you need to pass them as a list. Okay, so then you got the mean and a max value. So this is the part where we calculated mean and the max and group by. So advanced group by we did. So come to the question here. So we group by occupation, age, salary, mean, and then when you have to group by multiple aggregate functions, right? So you can use city, salary, like whatever you want. So those things you can do. Now come to the last concept of this particular topic, that is merging. If you remember, in Python, in SQL, we have merging available, like inner join, outer join, right? Those things are available. So how do we do in Python? Let's say we have the first data frame and we have the second data frame. So let's run them. Okay, so my first data set is, I have ABC key and the value is 1, 2, 3, and the second data frame is BCD and it has value 456. So let's say I want to perform multiple joins. So how do we do? Join is equivalent to merge. So what you do, merge PDF is equal to pd.merge. So let me just have it here. Okay, so let me just copy it here. Okay, so you have both the datasets. Now you want to create a merged table. Okay, so now it depends which merge do you want. So remember, pandas has to be called first whenever you're using it, because pandas is your main class. PD, then your subclass, that is merge. And so after that merge, what you need to pass? You need to pass all the datasets that you are using. So you have df1 and then you have df2. Okay, this happens. Now there are two things: on which type of join you want and on what variable do you want, right? That is these are the two information that you need to provide in any join when you join in a table. So how do you do that? On. Remember in SQL also we do that: select a dot star comma b dot star. Sorry, I mean a dot star left join, like whatever you write, b dot star, and then you do this thing on a dot, let's say I is equal to b dot j, right? So this is on function. So you use on and then you use how keyword. I want an inner join. You can use an outer join as well depending on your thing. So how I want on is equal to, is my key. I'll use key, and how is equal to inner. It's very simple thing in Python, but just that you have to get used to it. Okay, now let's be print merged underscore table. Okay, so you see BC, right? Because if you see in both the keys, we have only BC as common, right? So I'll get BC, then value 1 will be 2, 3 and value 2 will be 4, 5. That's how things will be done in a simple inner join. So you can do outer join, you can explore all those things, right? If you want. So this was the last concept, that is we were using, for example, we were using joins. Okay, now let's do an example here where you have to load a data set and you have to perform some operations. So I'll just show you that how I have done. So you can just, whenever you practice on your own, just go through it, right? So first of all, you're given a data set containing sales information from different stores in various cities. Your task is to clean the data, analyze sales performance by city, and generate a summary report. Okay, so to clean the data, first of all, let's have a look how the data is looking like. So what I do, this is the sales data example which is present. I've given the file in the link. You can download it from there, and you do print it the first few values. And if you see that, so we have city, store, sales, employees. Okay, so what is my cleaning method? If you remember, we drop duplicates, or we either we drop duplicates or we simply we replace duplicates. So I don't see any duplicates, so don't need to do that. Sorry, duplicate, there might be New York, yeah, there are duplicates, right? So there is no blank value, so we don't need to get rid of blank values here. So drop duplicates here, and NA is not there, right? So you don't need to specifically do that. Now if I run this, now let me just print df. Let's see what it comes with. Okay, so now I am left with this data set. So after this, we will come to group by city and cumulative total sales, right? So it is just like getting the sales, group by and city, and you do the sum. Okay, so you generate this particular thing, and let's print city underscore sales. Okay, you got across various cities, and for the city with the highest value, so what do? You select the city with max sales, right? So this is how you do it, and then you generate the summary report. So you can read along with it. So it's a pretty simple thing that we did, the basic summary, and now in the end you are given some practice questions which you can so there is some basic questions, there is some intermediate, and there are some advanced questions. Okay, so you should do this. I have provided the data sets in the link to this video, and you can download them and practice them as submission. So this was a basic overview of Pandas. Remember, you don't need to remember everything, just remember whatever steps, methods are we doing. Okay, so if I come here, we did filtering. Okay, after that we did some group by, and then we did merging. Okay, so these are the 10 topics of this particular video that we did. So just remember this, all we can do, how things are done. Even if you don't remember syntax, again I'm saying it's totally fine, you'll remember with time, no problem. So we checked in Pandas there are series and there is data frame, two classes. Now how to basically access elements is using iloc. Then you can drop duplicates, you can replace duplicates, and you can remove, you can drop blank and you can remove duplicate, replace blanks. Then transformation you can apply and you can change the column name, you can use rename, you can use filtering, you can use group by, and you can use merging. So this was a summary on this was a quick detailed video on Pandas. I think this is more than enough for you guys. We'll be using Pandas extensively once we start the analysis. So please remember, solve that assignment, and thanks again for watching this video. And the next library that we will take up is NumPy. So really thanks again for watching this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not, and let me know if this video explanation was good or not. If you want me to change anything the way I'm teaching, please let me know in the comments so that I also get to know. Some feedback is required. So sometimes I get fast, sometimes I get slow, right? I want to know that. So whatever is possible, I'll try to improve for you guys. So thanks again for watching the video. Have a good day. Thanks a lot.